Becky here from So Much More, and I'm really excited today because I am in the garden of no-dig expert Steph Hafferty today. How are you, Steph?
I'm great, thank you.
And I've come all the way to the middle of nowhere in Wales to visit Steph, and she's only been in this garden for a few months and it's already looking super productive and absolutely beautiful. And what I'd like to talk to you today about, Steph, is what you have cropping in your garden at the moment, because we're getting into winter. A lot of people are packing up their gardens this time of year, and one of the things that you do really, really well, not just in your polytunnel but outside, is to showcase growing all year round. So can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in your garden at the moment?
Okay, yes, so here in the polytunnel, as you can see, it's about half full. I've still got some more beds to make, and all of this will have been sown from August onwards because the polytunnel wasn't here till August. And in here I've got salads. These potatoes are for cropping at Christmas time. They were planted in August. Carrots, which will crop next spring. Different kinds of orientals, the Chinese leaves, pak choi, and lots of different kinds of herbs, dill, coriander, parsley, chervil. Really important, I think, in the winter, herbs, because it helps to lift a meal. It sort of brings freshness. And the beetroot for leaves, not for beetroots, because they were sown too late really to produce a crop, and loads of different kinds of brassicas. So all the brassicas in here would be fine outside as well, but I always grow some under cover too, because it's handy if it snows or if it's really cold, because you can still get them, and they produce an earlier crop for longer. And another thing with the brassicas is in the spring, when they go to flower, the flowers attract beneficial predators. So in the spring I'll open the doors and the beneficial predators will know that this is a place to come, and then as I'm planting my summer crops, I'll already have a habitat here for creatures that eat aphids. So it's not just about food, it's also about looking at the overall health of the garden. And outside I've got leeks, parsnips, more brassicas, beetroot and carrots, which I leave in the ground. Now here it's a bit of an experiment because I've not been a winter here, but in Somerset I would cover them with 2 layers of fleece and then a layer of Enviromesh, and the Enviromesh was just to stop the fleece getting torn by any visiting creatures, and they'd be fine in the ground. They even survived the beasts from the east like that, and that I find so much easier than harvesting and storing, because most of us don't really have the space for lots of vegetable storage. Here we'll see what it's like, because obviously this is West Wales, and as you can hear it is wet. So I'm going to still store half outside and half in, just to make sure and just see how it goes. A lot of it is to do with planning. So like parsnips, I start sowing those March, April time, and making sure that you're keeping an eye on time as it passes, particularly during the summer when you just don't think about winter veg. But those are often the key times for making sure you've sown the brassicas that you'll want to eat all through the winter. And it's really important, I think, to have as much fresh food that you can in winter months. It's good for your stomach with the soil bacteria, and it kind of lifts the spirits on grey days.
Absolutely. And I really like what you're saying about cropping through the winter being important, also not just for getting food for yourself, but also for getting food for the environment as a whole, and for maintaining that as an ecosystem, because ecosystems in nature don't just shut down just because it's winter. And one of the things that you like to look after, and I've spoken about as well, is soil. And the soil in your garden is a particularly important part of the garden. So you're a no-dig gardener. How important do you think it is to look after your soil and to continue cropping through winter as part of soil care?
It is extremely important. Now, as a no-dig gardener, you can mulch the beds with a couple of centimetres of compost in the autumn winter time, and that that feeds the soil, and it's not like a barren wasteland. That is full of life, and it is working with the soil life, the bacteria, the fungi, etc., to create ideal growing conditions. So that is one way. Some of the beds will be looking empty during the winter time. But if you've got root systems in the soil, then that is really helpful for all of the soil life. It creates a very vibrant environment. So I will grow things, too much of things in a way, which is quite handy because you never know what might get blown over or eaten by a winter slug. But also the roots are working with the soil life to create a really thriving environment for the spring plantings and so on. I do use some green manures for that reason, but I make sure that they're things that will either be killed by the frost, such as mustards, agricultural mustards, or things like field beans, which you can cut down in the spring if you want that bed. Leave the roots in the soil to feed the soil life, and then the actual plant is really handy for making bulk for compost heaps. So yeah, it's sort of using different techniques and methods to create a sort of I can't even talk English, biodiversity in the garden.
That's
fungi. So I look very excited by my fungi that's growing there in the potatoes.
And this is all you are tying together here, years and years and years of experience. And you've been a no-dig gardener for how long?
13 years.
And you've been a gardener for?
Since my late teens.
So that's a long
Quite
time.
Properly, I started growing my own vegetables when I was about 17, when I discovered this wonderful book written by Farmers Weekly about making wine. So I actually got into growing as in my late teens, mid-teens, because I discovered that you could make alcohol from it. And so when I went to university, when I was 19, I went with demijohns of wine that I was making. But I actually started growing on a much more wider scale when I became a parent when I was 27. So quite a while.
That's absolutely wonderful, and it really does show that you have a lot of experience and that all of this knowledge about growing, but also knowledge about the environment, is being applied in your garden. So I'd like to have a look at what you've got growing as seedlings at the moment, and it's mid-October at the moment as we're filming this, so shall we go and have a look at your seedlings?
Okay, let's look at the seedlings.
Hey Steph, so can you show us some of your little leaf children, please?
When I got my first polytunnel about 11, 12 years ago, my children said that I preferred plants to them because I'd bought them a polytunnel and I'd never done anything for them.
To be fair, you probably put it exactly where they would have had a trampoline.
Yeah, they were too old for a trampoline at that point, but yes, pretty much. I got rid of the lawn. Anyway, this is one that I grow every winter. They're spring onions, multi-sown in the module trays, so there's about 6 seeds in each module. These haven't germinated well for some reason, and these have been fine, and it's all the same variety, so I don't know why that is. But they are super because you get spring onions all winter and spring, and then going into the spring they bulb up, so you get baby onions. So they're kind of multi-use, which is really handy, and they like our climate. They don't mind getting frozen in the winter, so they're pretty good to grow. And also different kinds of brassicas. I grow a lot of kale, and these are all different kales. And there are too many kales here of each variety. 5 of each I pricked out. That's too many for me and my family. But as you can see, some have gone missing. They got visited by a slug. So because as you're going into the winter time, every day it's cooler and shorter. There's less light, there's less warmth, and growth slows down. So you don't have the same window for mistakes that you do in the spring when the days are getting longer and longer gradually. So I grow too many plants to allow for accidents. The worst accident, actually, which was the other week when I dropped a whole tray and killed the lot, but which I wouldn't recommend, so that whole lot is just too late for those ones now. So that's what I do, and then I'll choose the best of these and plant them out, and then any that are left, I'll pinch them out like that, and they just get eaten in a salad. So like a little micro leaf.
And when do you expect to see a crop from these little kale babies?
Well, these kale babies will be late winter before they crop, and I'll be picking the leaves fairly small, so almost like I pick lettuce, and then they'll grow very quickly eventually, and as the spring starts happening and they get excited. The other kale, which I'm picking now, that was sown in August.
And we also have some salads, and you've spoken about salads being an important thing to have nice, fresh, crispy things to eat during the winter. And a lot of people don't really associate salads with winter growing, but actually they are fantastic over winter, aren't they?
Absolutely, and you don't need a polytunnel. You can do all of the salads outside and make a cloche with hoops and a piece of old polythene, like the polythene that comes on a mattress or something like that is ideal for winter cropping. It's better polythene than Enviromesh because than fleece, because it's clear and you've got less light in the winter. But there's a bit of a myth that you shouldn't be eating raw salads in the winter time, and that is because most of the salads in the supermarkets are flown in, and people are mixing up, particularly in the media, the difference between something you've picked from the ground yourself or bought from a local market garden. Because for 12 of the past 13 years I've been working in market gardening most of the time, and one of the key crops in the wintertime is salad. And that's fine if you're buying it locally, but you don't want to be buying it if it's flown in from elsewhere. The key lettuce that I grow every year is Grenoble Red. That grows really, really well. It survives low temperatures and it keeps cropping. So a sowing in September, that can crop right through to May, and some of the times I'm only removing them because I need space for the tomatoes and other things to go in. And it's easy to save seed from. You just let two. Don't just leave one, because I did that and I killed it and knocked it over with a hose. Have 2 plants for seed, and then hopefully you'll get, enough seed for the following year. And I pick the outer leaves and that just keeps cropping and cropping. But I also like to grow hearting lettuce because I love grilled lettuce. It's so good. And that's another thing about growing your own food, is you can be so much more experimental with your cooking because you've got far more possibilities, and you can try different things such as this landcress, which is variegated. It's absolutely lovely. I bought this as a little plant, but you can have that.
Ooh, thank you.
But you can't really get that in the supermarket, can you? So,
No.
Yeah, it's and it's just exciting. It gets you out of the house, which is always handy in the winter as well. If you've got to go on a mission to get your lunch, even on miserable days, it is worth getting outside.
Tell us a little bit about what's going on out here, because we've seen your beautiful polytunnel, but this is really something. And like I said before, this was only started in March, April of this year.
Yeah, the first bed over there was started literally the last day of March. This bed here was started late April, early May, and that one was done on June the 20th. I remember that because
that's its birthday.
It's its birthday. I was working away the next day, so I had to get it finished. So this bed here has some flowers which have been completely flattened by the wind. Mm-hmm. Parsnips, which is the second sowing of parsnips. I have the first sowing up there, which was done April time, and then these were done in June. And a second sowing of parsnips just produces slightly smaller parsnips, which is absolutely fine. It's something I learnt to do when I used to run a kitchen garden on a large private estate, and I was having to produce things at different stages and at different sizes. And with the parsnips, when I sowed them, I intercropped them with radish. So I've been eating most of the radish, and some of them then went to seed, and I leave those, which produces the flowers, which are edible and spicy, but also great for insects, as well as my favourite things, the beneficial predators. And the pods are edible too. They're spicy and delicious. You can eat them raw, you can stir fry them, you can pickle them. So you get a kind of extra bonus crop. And then there's some leeks and carrots. The carrots are intercropped with agretti, and that is, the agretti here is simply because I want the seed. So because agretti seed is so much better fresh, so I do try and get my own for the following year. And there was some agretti over there, which is what I've been eating. And these carrots, again, were sown at the same time as the parsnips. If you're sowing parsnips or carrots in the summertime, it's crucial to keep on top of the watering, because if it's not doing this, they need water to germinate.
Right on cue.
But the exciting thing about the carrots, because I haven't harvested any parsnips yet, is this was made cardboard on top of weedy grass with 5 centimetres of compost. And I sowed different varieties of the carrots, and it's been exciting to see how they've grown down, because a lot of people thought I'd only get 5 centimetre long carrots, and they just go through into the ground beneath. But they wouldn't if it was very dry, because they just hit against the cardboard. We've also got multi-sown spring onions, which were flattened in a storm. Flat spring onions. And then behind you, multi-sown leeks. And some of these have actually bolted. They've produced a flower shoot like that, which is really weird. That shouldn't be happening till April. And this is a sign of stressed out leeks. Basically, what they think is they've gone through the winter, some of them. The rest of them are fine. It's just happened to a few.
Yeah, we had a really cold period followed by a warm spell, and now it's gone back to being cold and wet.
Yes, so this leek thinks it's April, May time. It's a bit confused, but we can eat that for our tea, actually. They're really nice.
Hurrah, let's do it. So, Steph, thank you so much for showing us around your garden, and also for having me stay at your house and feeding me. I really appreciate it. So it's been absolutely wonderful to look at what you've got growing and what you're going to be eating this winter as well. So thank you very much. Lovely to see you.
Thank you.
And I'll be back soon with more. Thanks. Bye.